Hey, Kexter.
Hey, how's everyone?
Doing all right. Just getting started.
All right, where are we?
We haven't decided yet. Well,
Oh.
that's in flux.
We're getting
I'll
started
let you-
on deciding.
I'll let you know in a second.
All right.
So there's a question. Did we ever decide what we're going to do next, study-wise?
We are thinking it is going to be Ephesians.
Okay.
So that's what that's where it stands right now. Allegedly, Ongirth is probably going to be doing the introduction to that next week. But we're gonna nail that down. So it's not set in stone per se. Any other questions?
Has anyone ever done the Book of Daniel?
You don't want me doing the Book of Daniel. And I understand the reference to that. You guys are wanting to get around the Revelation study. Trust me, you don't want me doing the Book of Daniel. My pastor, my founding pastor of the church that I attend, I remember when I was younger, in like middle school, he started a study in the Book of Daniel that went Sunday mornings and Sunday nights for 3 years.
Okay then, never mind.
They're having a lot of trauma around how long Romans took.
So you don't want me, after having experienced that, you don't want me to teach in the Book of Daniel. I'll say that. Yeah,
Okay.
my pastor was a bit of a heavyweight. He's the same one that I've referenced before as saying he tells me that he speaks 2 languages fluently, English and Southern. Same guy. So, any other questions, guys?
I can't think right now.
I have one question. Oh, was I supposed to raise my hand? Whoops.
Oh, you're fine. Go ahead, Aloe.
Okay. Why is it that the Book of Revelations is avoided so much? But also, why has it become a meme?
It became a meme because we don't do it.
It would take too long.
People want it. Ongirth has a saying. He says there are 2 books that we don't do Bible studies on in CC. We won't do one on Song of Solomon. We don't do one on Revelation. And he says, but there are inevitably 2 things that people want to know, or 3 things. I'm sorry. He says people want to know about sex, the end times, and will there be sex in the end times?
Oh, so that's why.
So, well, the thing about the end times, like 65 of the 66 books in the Bible, we can look back on and have historical evidence and references and look back and say, okay, this is what they're talking about. This is stuff that makes sense. We can translate that because we have the lens of history to see it through and interpret it with a certain degree of clarity and accuracy because we understand what has transpired. With Revelation, that all happens in the future, and so everything we can guess and we can kind of presume, but there's nothing that we know for sure, really. Everything is very the descriptions that John uses in the book of Revelation, the way that everything is told, there's a lot of debate over Revelations and there's a lot of disagreement. So inevitably, that study is going to go off the rails frequently. So as a result, we've just decided, you know what, we're not going to cover Revelation here because there's so many different viewpoints. If we say something, there are going to be people that disagree. There are going to be people that are going to want to be very dogmatic about something, and it just creates this environment where there are going to be so many rabbit trails. It's like going to be traveling through Mammoth Cave.
Wow. All right then. I figured that was the reason, but
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yep, that's fine. Keza, go ahead.
My internet broke up when you were first saying what you were going to do tonight, so I'm sorry. I heard you ask for questions, but I wasn't sure of the context.
Biblical questions. Was there any like passage of scripture, any topic or anything you guys were curious about? Like just something that we didn't address 2 weeks ago, something that you thought of?
I forgot my question now.
Well, now
Dang
I
it.
just want to say Revelation.
I'm gonna just start swinging. I'm just gonna.
Okay.
I don't blame you.
Here's one, but I don't think we talked about it, if you guys don't mind.
Okay, go ahead. I do reserve the
That-
right to veto.
Okay, not necessarily like in the Bible, but like we're called to be good stewards of God's money, right?
Yes.
But the borrower is slave to the lender. So what about the people who use credit cards for like travel points or points?
Credit cards are now in biblical context, the idea of borrowing and lending carried with it the idea of slavery.
Yep.
And so, especially in the New Testament, within the context of the Roman Empire, where there were tons of slaves. But the whole idea there is not to come to the point where you owe so much to one person. It's trying to keep your record clear. With credit cards now, we have accounts. And so I don't think it's a violation of biblical principle to have a credit card and to use it for various things, so long as you keep it under control. You don't want to reach a point. It's not about. It's less about the about not having a debt. Although I understand the point of that, it's more about fiscal responsibility. If you can keep it under tabs, if you can keep it under control and know what you're using it for, and don't allow it to control you, but you are in control of it, that's what we're going for.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct, Cressa.
Because I read somewhere like someone said it was about like trust, and I'm like, that makes sense to me, like trusting God. But
to a certain degree, I can see trust, but that was the whole idea of stewardship. Is that there was that even Jesus taught about that. He had the parable of the talents, where he gave each of his servants a certain number of talents and trusted them to make interest on it, to earn money, to grow what he had given them in his investments. And so that's what God's done to us. He's given us talents and expects us to become profitable to further his kingdom with these talents that he's given us. And so that's the idea there. We are supposed to be good stewards of his money, and so he has entrusted us with these talents.
okay, that makes more sense. For me, I'm just like
very, very true, Kessa. Godliness with contentment is great loss to the credit card companies.
That's true. All right, because there's like a whole debate going on in the Dave Ramsey group I'm in, but I'm like, I'll ask.
Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey is a good man.
Yes.
He's got very good points, and he's very financially wise, especially with the whole. I understand his thing is he pays cash for everything. I get that. He's like, he hates the credit cards. He like despises them. He's like, cash for everything. If you don't have the cash, you shouldn't pay for it. I get that. I'm not as dogmatic as he is, but his principles aren't bad.
Exactly.
The ability to get out of debt as consistently as people do on using his principles is a telling statistic.
Ironically, not to bag on my mom, but she went through his course, and she advocates for me using the credit card, and she's back in debt.
You have to again. It's about the responsibility.
True.
Any other questions, guys? Oh, sorry, Kister.
Oh, I just said thank you. Sorry.
You're welcome. Yes, Kessa.
Is it your preference to have questions, or are you just trying to kind of mop up?
It doesn't matter. I actually have something. I have it open over here in my folder. It's a study I did a number of years ago. I'm trying to think. There may have been a couple of you that were here for it. I know of one that was here. But I know Allo wasn't there, Casso wasn't there, Kickster was not there. Doctor might have been there. Football was there. Football's the one I was sure of. So do you guys want me to do that, or do you want to keep asking questions? If you don't have any questions, then obviously I guess my mind's made up for me.
I say do your thing.
Okay. I will attempt to get through it in 25 minutes. Wow, you guys, you do great stuff. All right.
24.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Shut up. Some of you have heard me talk about this study that I did. This was actually the very first study that I did on CC. And Ongirth went back and revisited a study of his last week. I thought I would probably do the same because this was just such an amazing study to me. A number of years ago, we went through the book of Genesis. And Genesis, much like Romans, took us a little while to get through. There are 50 chapters in Genesis. And so it took us a fair bit, even going a chapter a day. And so Ongirth ended up at one point he had a kidney stone and was kind of debilitated for a little while. And so I was pressed into an emergency teacher role. And this was my first study. So Genesis 5 is the genealogy of early mankind, specifically from Adam to Noah. And I think there was a certain stigma that surrounds genealogies. You know, they're boring, they're dry, they're dull. Yeah, Doc, I'm gonna smack you.
It's gonna be interesting.
And sorry, phone. They are hard to read at Bible studies, and so I found it very ironic and very. And I was like, oh, great. So my first Bible study, I get to read all the begats. It's great. But as I studied and looked into this passage, I found that God had placed a beautiful prophetic story in the midst of a genealogy. The last place I would expect to find something like that. It was incredible. And so this to start teaching, to start my, I don't want to call it a career, but my tenure, I don't know, as the Bible study leader here in CC with this kind of study was very poignant and very important to me. And so I wanted to go back, revisit it, because like I said, there's only one person, as far as I know of, that was there for this. And I think it's an important, as weird as it is to be talking about a genealogy is an important thing. I want to cover it, and like I said, I've only got about 20 minutes, so I'm going to attempt to cover it quickly. Now, I'm not gonna have you guys read it. I'm going to cover most of the stuff, but this is the genealogy of mankind from Adam to Noah. Now, you know, those two names we're familiar with. Some of the ones in the middle are a little less familiar, so we're going to cover all of those. A couple of notes that need to be made that we oftentimes miss, especially in Western culture, about genealogies, Jewish genealogies specifically. The idea of the word father, which appears a lot in Genesis 5, like Adam was the father of Seth. We know that that's a direct fatherhood. We know that Adam was literally the dad of Seth. Seth was Adam's third son. But the word father can literally mean like grandfather or great-grandfather. It's a term that is kind of gray on the number of generations that it leads down to. So when it says that that such and such was the father of this guy, they could be skipping a few generations. So it's not exactly clear, but that doesn't detract from the message of Genesis 5. In fact, I think that if it was the case that things are left out, then it just shows how God was very specifically trying to make this message known because he selected these certain individuals to be pointed out. Also, in this passage, specifically in verse 26, it stated that after the birth of this guy Enosh, who we'll get to, that men began to call upon the name of the Lord. What that references is that there was a kind of this definitive worship that was set up. Before it had been, we've talked about sacrifices, obviously Cain and Abel. with their sacrifices. But at this point, after the birth of Enosh, there was more of a traditional worship manner that was set up that became more common. Instead of having individual manners of worship, it's like what we would have in church now. It just kind of recognized this is the worship service or something. That's what this is indicating. And that would serve as the foundation for the worship styles for the Hebrew nation, as well as a number of other nations, starting from this point. So, let's get going. So, in the genealogy of Adam to Noah, who comes first? Anybody know? Hashtag not a trick question.
Adam.
It's not a trick question. That's right. It's Adam. All right. Adam. Now, the name Adam, does anybody know what the name Adam literally means? Does anybody know its meaning? Yeah, Kessa was on that really fast. Like, I barely got the question out before she had the answer down. It means man. That's what it means. It's like, oh, he's a man. That's cool. So one thing cool about this is that in the opening portion of Genesis 5, it mentions that in Genesis 5:1 it says, "This is the book of generations of Adam." Now that word generations is the Hebrew word toledoth, or I can't speak Hebrew, so I'm hoping I'm not absolutely butchering that word. But after the study, who did Cain marry? He married his sister. All right, moving on. But that's the Hebrew word for generations. And in Hebrew, do you know what that translates to? Or not in the Hebrew. In the Greek, that translates as a different word. Toledoth in the Greek translates to this word. So literally, yeah, it does sound a little familiar, doesn't it? Literally, the idea of the name of the book of Genesis literally means the book of generations. That's what the Hebrew or the Greek Septuagint translated it as.